So, like, where did you get the Leopard Lady?
Well, I had been playing a lot of guitars up to that point, and once I got into the Stooges, I pretty much was playing a Gibson SG at that point, and I felt like I needed something that had. I mean, the SG was nice, but the Les Paul had a different kind of sound that I was looking for. So I went downtown to Ann Arbor with Iggy, as a matter of fact, and he knew the guy at the music store, who made me a deal, which was I had to give him my old, well, it wasn't that old, but my 1960s white Fender Jaguar and my SG, and I think I gave him something else too. I think he got the better end of that deal, but I ended up with a Les Paul.
Yeah. And what was special about that one? Why did you?
Well, you know, just from the very beginning, it was a really cool sounding guitar. I didn't know at the time. And it was what was called a fretless wonder in those days. But what I didn't know at the time was that the DC resistance of the pickups was fairly low. I think, if I recall correctly, it's like I want to say it's just below 7 k ohms on the treble pickup, and or it might even be lower than that. I forget right now. But anyway, it turns out that kind of gives it that biting sound that's characteristic of my guitars.
Yep.
And so anyway, I ended up with it, and I've been happy with it ever since.
Cool. Awesome, man. And then, like, I've read and we've also found that you, for lots of raw power, you used the Gibson acoustic to write it in a hotel room.
I did.
Yeah?
I did. That kind of blows some minds, but when I got over to London, I bought a B25 Natural, and I still have it. As a matter of fact, I loaned it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so it's sitting there in Cleveland in the Stooges cabinet.
Cool. Yeah.
So you can see it for yourself. And anyway, it was a nice little guitar. It had a real thin neck, and so it was easy to transition back and forth to electric, and didn't, you know, it wasn't real loud, so I could play it up in my room and work out riffs and stuff. And I, you know, it's a dandy guitar.
Yeah. That's cool. So did you do like Search and Destroy with it and all of those riffs?
Almost every single one of them. Yeah.
Those are some really cool riffs. Like the walk up. It's kind of like it's almost upside down. You know.
Well, the thing about playing with acoustic for writing is you can hear the tone of the notes really clearly, and so so I could tell, you know, what was working with what, and you know, could work it out that way. Of course, it sounds very different when you put it on electric, but it is a good way to write, and I still write a lot of stuff on acoustic.
Yeah. And what was it like being there in London after the first breakup of the Stooges? Did that affect your songwriting? Did it?
It was probably good for us because we didn't know a lot of people, so we couldn't get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So we pretty much, you know, we were kind of isolated in a way, and could focus just on the music, so it was good for that.
And you started off originally with, you wanted some other musicians, but then brought the Ashton brothers back into it, right? They came over? Yeah,
we started out, just Iggy and I went over, and the idea was to, you know, make a new band, and we got over and didn't really click with the other guys and the style of music and so forth, and so one day I just leaned over to Iggy and said, look, you know, this isn't working for me, and why don't we just call the Ashtons up? We know those guys can play, and you know, they're like us, and let's just get it over with. And Ron had originally played bass in the band I was in, the same band. He was the bass player for it, so so I knew he could play bass, and that worked out great.
Yeah, awesome, man. So was there, from the whole raw power period, was there a particular performance that sticks in your mind? Anything that was, you know, like Metallic KO, was that really a fight at the end? What was the story there?
Yeah, well, of course, that one is the one that's captured for posterity, but I'm not actually that proud of that, because I feel like we might have contributed to the violence that occurred so much later on. It kind of glamorized the whole thing. But, you know, on the other hand, all that stuff was going to happen anyway. You know, Altamont had happened and all that stuff started happening. But I think it was the gig 2 days before the Metallic KO that was sort of mind-blowing, because we got booked into a little biker's bar called the Rock and Roll Farm, and we got up and did our set, and you know, Iggy's pretty confrontational, so he gets out in the audience with these bikers, and you know, they weren't having any of it, and they just cold-cocked him, and so here we were, and we weren't sure we were going to get out of there alive, and they didn't pay us or anything, and it was kind of ugly, but anyway, it was memorable because our invincibility was shattered that night.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool, man. And how do you see, like, you just touched on it a little bit about how you feel like you're not so proud of it, but how do you see the Stooges, and especially Raw Power, you know, so many years on? It's such a thing, you know.
Yeah.
How do you look at the album as a whole, and also the you know, just the whole thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, in hindsight, you know, the album was a sort of milestone, if you will. I mean, we played and wrote and played music differently from anybody else at the time, and I think it oddly it sounds contemporary today, because so many bands have sort of imitated the sound that people are accustomed to it now, and it just sounds like the stuff they're buying today. But it's, you know, 30 some odd years old at this point. You know, the album it stands alone. I mean, there's nothing else that ever sounded like it before or since.
Oh, totally, yeah. I got just 2 more for you. Thank you so much, Steve. What's your favorite guitar player?
Well, you know, that covers a lot of ground. I did, you know, you guys asked me for a top 25 list, and I came up with it. But I'd have to say that if I was forced to answer that question, which I seem to be now, I would say it's Jeff Beck. He's
awesome, yeah.
you know, he's the guy that I think everybody else has to, you know, sort of hold up against if you think you're a hot guitar player. You know, he's just ridiculously good.
Yeah, cool, man. Then, like, right now when you pick up that Les Paul, like, what is it about it that you like so much? Is it the look, the feel?
Yeah, you know, it's everything. I mean, the Les Paul, I have lots of guitars, but when it comes to playing, you know, loud rock and roll music, there's nothing like them. You know, the Les Paul is just basically a big hunk of wood. Heavy one, by the way. And so it has this characteristic that it'll feed back, but it won't start squealing. And that's really important for what kind of stuff that we do. And so you know, I have you know, the pickups, and I do different things with the guitars to set them up the way I like them. But the basic thing is there on all of them, and that's this big hunk of wood, and that's, you know, that's what they're all about.
Cool, man. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, my pleasure.
That's great.